Welcome. Thank you for tuning in to Gather and Heal, the podcast. Welcome back, y'all. Thank you so much if you are tuning in yet again to Gather and Heal, the podcast. So on today's episode, I was able to pull through with another special and beautiful guest. And we have Yenny here who is going to do her intro, her bio, because y'all already know I don't do that. It's not just trying to read off of a piece of paper. I got the whole beautiful human here with me. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Let's just jump right on in. Yenny, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me, Vanessa. I'm Yenny James, and I am the founder of Paradigm Doulas, which is a doula certifying organization. I am Latina, Dominican, and immigrant here. I am a mother of two babies. Well, they're my babies. My son is 9 years old and my daughter's a year old, so they're still babies to me. I'm a wife of 10 years, and I'm just a human being here to serve the community.
I love that. Human being here to serve the community. That is so beautiful. So tell us a little bit about your company, because as we chat about that, it'll filter into how we met, because we Instagram friends. That's how we met.
Yes. So Paradigm Doulas, I launched it last year, and I created a curriculum that combined birth doula and postpartum doula together, as well as focusing heavily on community health work, because I have focused on serving families in underserved and underrepresented communities. And here in Texas, there aren't a lot of community doulas. So it was a way to increase the amount of community doulas that we have here. And also in our country, because it's a virtual program, so anyone can get certified through me. It is, like I said, it's virtual. You can finish in as little as 2 weeks, or you can take as long as you'd like. It's self-paced, so anyone can access it. And it's not just women that become doulas. A lot of people think it's just women. I encourage dads to become doulas. It's very inclusive. So I definitely opened up a space for everyone to feel welcomed, because I think of the modern family as well. So I always tell everyone, like, this is the program for you, especially for working parents or working families. People that don't even have families, like, you don't have to have babies to be a doula. If you have a passion to be a birth worker, this is for you, to help people that a lot of people forget about. Like, there are foster teens that are pregnant that are birthing alone. There are pregnant incarcerated women that are birthing alone. There are refugees that, because of language barriers, just a lot of things. And also, I created this as a way to improve birth outcomes, because a lot of people don't realize that in our country, Black women, Latina women, and also Indigenous women are dying at a higher rate than their white counterparts. So specifically New York City is high. I mean, like, typically it's Black women and Indigenous women are dying 2 to 3 times the rate, but New York is almost at 12. So there's a lot, yes, and a lot of people don't realize that. So I'm like, if we can get community doulas out there, I just think that it's just a way to improve this maternal health crisis that we're facing here.
So let me ask you a question. So many things. I got so many things going through my mind. But my first one is there a difference between a community doula, a doula, postpartum doula, pregnancy doula, birthing doula? You think I would know? I did my research. I had a doula. Shout out. She was fantastic. Love her. But like, I feel like there's a lot of terms. So
There are
a little bit for us.
Yes, there are a lot of doulas. So I'm specifically a birth and postpartum doulas. They have abortion doulas, full spectrum doulas. They have end of life doulas, but I specifically focus on pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And also, when it comes to community doulas, the reason we term that is because there are doulas that don't feel comfortable working in certain communities. There are doulas that don't feel comfortable working with teenage pregnant moms or birthing folks. They wouldn't feel comfortable being in that space with pregnant incarcerated women, who a lot of people don't know still birth in shackles in a lot of states in our country. A lot of doulas who don't focus on community doulas also don't feel comfortable working with refugees. They don't feel comfortable being in working in underserved communities. Where community doulas, like a lot of us are from communities that have this high maternal and infant mortality rates. And we also, instead of doing maybe just two prenatal visits throughout pregnancy and maybe one postpartum visit, we actually stay with that client throughout, and we make sure that we are connecting you to resources that are essential for you, because there are women who don't have, like, some are even in shelters.
Mhm.
So we have to make sure, do you have a crib? Do you have food? Do you have essentials for the baby? And community doulas really focus on that. And the thing though is that with community doulas, we don't get compensated that well,
Mm,
because a lot of the things that we offer have to be on sliding scales, because these families can't afford us. They
yeah.
can't afford $1,800 or $2,000. So then we have to work with families who, either some of us do this pro bono work or we do sliding scales. And there are nonprofits specifically here in Texas that I know that pay us to help um, people in underserved communities, where they receive the
Mm,
service for free, but now we get paid. But in other states, you don't find nonprofits that do that. Everything is volunteer basis. And that's why I'm working towards finding a way to, like I was saying earlier, like, not just, you won't just become birth and a postpartum doula, but you can also become a community health worker. And
mm.
community health workers are so essential. So this is a way to create job opportunities, have
Okay.
community health workers that focus on maternal health care,
Yes.
because right now community health workers in our state mainly focus on, like, cardiac issues or diabetes, but not a lot on maternal and child health, which is essential here. It's
It's
essential.
so crazy, especially giving the numbers of the
Right.
maternal mortality rates and so on. It's like, wait, why is there not already this
Right.
these supports and these people and resources in place? And
Yes.
you know, just continues to reinforce my whole these systems were not built for us. And when I say us, I mean it in a lot of different ways.
Right.
But here, as a person who has birthed and carried and has also gone through IVF, so there's this reproductive medicine component too,
Mhm.
that I was continuously reminded that this ain't for you, but we're gonna let you in. That's the feeling, right? And want that. I don't want that for anyone else. I don't want that again. And so, like, that's the piece that makes, for me, I get so excited when I hear you talk about the program, because I'm like,
Mhm.
yes, we're going to have doulas, that we're going to have community doulas who are good with going into certain places, because there are birthing people everywhere in all places, right?
Right.
And they all deserve supports.
Right.
And can you tell us like a quick breakdown difference between a doula and a midwife, right? Because I think sometimes a lot of those terms are put
Yes.
together.
Yeah, there's a huge difference. So one,
Mhm.
doulas, we are not medical professionals. So even though by background I am, when I put on that doula hat, I cannot give you medical advice. I'm there to connect you with resources. I'm there to be an emotional and physical support for you. But midwives, they're the ones that are there to provide that prenatal care. We are part of a birth team, but we are not medical. So
Part
if anyone comes to me and, like, Yenny, this is what I'm going through, even though I have knowledge in medicine, like, I cannot tell you, even as a medical assistant, hey, this is what you have. I cannot diagnose you. So
Ooh,
that's
how
the big,
hard is that?
it's very difficult. But what I think it helps me though, because you have to be knowledgeable. One of the things that I tell my
Mm,
students is, I'm going to give you this information, not because you're here to diagnose, but if you understand the underlying conditions of, hey, you might have preeclampsia, even though I can't diagnose you with it, you can tell your client, you
mhm.
go see your physician, or you need to go see your midwife, whoever you're choosing to provide that care for you. So it's hard sometimes to kind of go back and forth, but I understand, like, my position, and I'm there to help you. And I'm so glad that I am knowledgeable in that, because there are things that just by knowing it, I can save your life.
Oof.
Oh, yeah.
Mm. Knowledge is power, y'all. That's what she's saying.
It is.
Um, so, and I'm thank you for that differentiation between midwife and doula, because like I said, there's a lot of times where the term they don't get used interchangeably, not that I've experienced, but people couple them together. And it's like, well, but hold on, you can have a doula and still see an OB if you want, or
Oh,
give
yeah.
birth in the hospital. It doesn't have to be in home if you don't want it to be.
Right. And I've actually focused most of my career has been at hospital births because unfortunately, providing services to families that are on Medicaid or uninsured, they didn't have the luxury of going to a birth center
Mm,
or having a midwife that went to their home.
mhm,
But one of the things that we find is that at hospitals, because of certain policies that they have, we have like, instead of including us as part of the birth team, we do get like this, you just know it's like a barrier, right? Like,
mhm,
oh, your doula's here. Because one of the things we do is like, we don't speak for you, but we provide you with that knowledge so that you can advocate for yourself, so that you can feel empowered. But sometimes when you're in that moment, there are things that you forget because it happened to me even as a doula. And
right.
it'd be nice to have someone there to say, no, that's not what she wanted. Like, this is not part of the birth plan. And I think that being in a hospital setting has been more difficult. Like, I've had a lot of resistance, unfortunately, but I'm here for the client. So,
Hey,
and that's mentally draining. I mean, what we do as doulas is really physical because
mhm,
we're there, we're providing continuous support. So that means a lot of hip squeezing. That means that when you're moving, I'm moving. But it's mentally draining to feel like the staff doesn't want you there. Like, that's on a whole different level. So I feel like as we start to talk about doulas and how essential we are, I'm hoping that hospitals begin to accept us there as part of the birth team because midwives, they love us. Like, we
mm,
love our midwives. And I've worked with OBs as well, and I love OBs, but I hate when there's that resistance
yeah.
and they're like, we're not gonna listen to you. Like, you're not really important. And truly we are.
Yes, yes, y'all are. Yes, y'all are. I'm thinking about how, so like I said, I was blessed to be able to work with a doula, super, super amazing woman. And I also had a midwife. And I started my birth at a birthing center,
Mhm.
but unfortunately we ran into some complications and I had to be transported by ambulance to the
Mhm.
local hospital. And there are points in that experience during labor that I don't remember, like, at all. It was
Mhm.
like I wasn't even there, but I
Mhm.
was. I
Yeah. Yeah, you were going through
was.
it.
Woo! But, I remember within a few days after being back home, my doula came over and we were talking about the experience, and she helped to also fill in some of those gaps, right?
Mhm,
Because there were parts of me that were really curious around, like, what was going on there? And,
mhm,
for example, I remember feeling this, like, tension in the room.
mhm.
I didn't know what was going on. And my doula ultimately told me later that there was some tension between the nurse and my midwife because they
Yeah,
both had different plans of
right,
what they thought should happen. My doula was like, she backed the midwife and was like, no, this is what Vanessa wants.
right.
All during moments that, like I said, I could feel it, right? Of course,
Mhm.
still being very energetically sensitive to what's happening around me.
Yes, no, I am the same way. You talk about empathy, my God.
Whew.
Mhm,
So like I knew it, and then it was such a beautiful thing to have her there because she supported myself, she supported my partner through it too. She was there, like you said, the physical to hold
mhm.
me up and to give me some tough love at certain points, but
Right.
like I cannot speak enough about my doula.
Yeah,
Love her.
I love
And it should be way more accessible. It breaks my heart every time I bring up doulas to clients of mine that are pregnant.
mhm,
And it runs the full gamut, right? Like there's people who's never heard of doulas. There are people who've heard of them, but think it's like only for elite rich people. There are people who are just like, yeah, I heard about it, but that's like this old school thing. All the
mhm.
way through the people who are like, I really want one, but I can't afford one. Where do I look?
Right. And
Mhm.
it's hard. It's hard. And it's crazy because even me, um, so just a quick story about me. When I was in Seattle,
We love stories.
well, when I was in Seattle before coming to Texas, I was 20 weeks pregnant when we decided to move because I decided to furlough where I was and everything that was going on with the pandemic, we just decided to come back. And mind you, over the past 10 years in different capacities, like I have worked with families, marginalized families. I have worked with my military community because I'm a veteran. And I have helped so many people that have been like, Yenny, I'm just afraid that something's going to happen to me during childbirth. And mind you, I've been an advocate for them for over 10 years now, right?
Mhm.
Even as a medical assistant, a hospital corpsman, a community health worker, and doula. And this was the first time when I came here that I was on Medicaid. I've never been on Medicaid in my adult life. When I had my son, I was in the military. So different. I mean, the experience wasn't good either. It was a traumatic birth for me. But when I came here, I'm like, I already know what I want. I've been a
Mhm.
doula. I've been advocating for other people. I want a VBAC because I had a cesarean with my son. I want
Mhm.
a water birth. And then I come and I'm like, I cannot afford a doula. I'm
Mm.
a doula who cannot afford a doula because we're furloughed. Like I was living with my cousin when we came. Like we were trying to find a house.
Yeah.
So many external factors. And being on Medicaid here, in a lot of places, you don't have that luxury of choosing a doctor that you really love. And
Mm.
so stuck with this provider, an OB, because I couldn't find a midwife that accepted my insurance based on my location.
Mhm.
And it's funny, like you talk about being VBAC friendly and VBAC tolerant. This doctor and I, we like head to head all the time. And it was the first time I told my husband, like, I feel like I'm not gonna make it
Wow.
because my heart rate, like some started happening, like it's over 160, and we couldn't find a cardiologist to see me in time because they didn't accept Medicaid, which was weird. And I just remember feeling here, I'm like, where's my doula? Like, I wanted a doula, and I could not find a doula that I could afford. And
Mm.
that's really what led me. Like, last year, I literally had to take time off because, mind you, even though I am a doula, I'm knowledgeable. I've been doing this for a long time and helping to advocate for families. When you are pregnant yourself, there are things that even hormonally, like, yes, I know how to advocate for myself, but I got tired. I got
Mhm.
tired of fighting with my doctor. I'm like, you know what? Let's just do another cesarean, whatever. Let me tell you, she did the cesarean and she did a second incision because she didn't like the way my first one looked for aesthetic purposes, not for medical purposes. And
Oh, hell no.
for me, like this is about consent. But for someone who experienced trauma as a child, this is more intense for me because
Mm.
you didn't talk about my mental state before. You didn't ask me. You didn't, and you've had all this time to look at my incision, what she has. And for you to make a decision while I'm on a table with a surgical tech I never even met, and
Mm.
you and I talked about this,
Mm.
and like I'm the patient, I'm right there. And honestly, last year, I just took time. I'm like, you know what? I'm not the only one she's doing this to. Um,
Mm.
and I need to find a way to get more community doulas out there because this isn't the story I wanted. This wasn't the birth that I wanted. And it was so hard for me to process this as a mom, but also as a doula, because having advocated and helped so many clients on Medicaid, like I just didn't think that would be my birth story because it's not what I wanted. And it was really hard for me to process. I'm like, we're going to make a difference here
Mm.
because I don't want her and anyone to experience that, especially people like that have been through sexual trauma or have been through some type of trauma where the way you look at yourself is really important,
Mm.
like body autonomy, just so many things. And yeah, that it's just the importance of having a doula, especially one that you can afford or someone that could do a sliding scale or someone that could do pro bono. This is why it's so important because even me, even someone with experience,
Mhm.
I didn't get the birth experience that I wanted. And I'm still over a year later processing what happened,
Yep.
processing like this was in a sense traumatic for me because it's consent. It's my body. It's the way I look at myself, and it was just hard. It was hard,
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I wanna say, like, the end of that sentence, you could drop off. It was traumatic for me. It was traumatic, period,
Yeah,
right? Because it doesn't matter if it was for you or for someone else. We're not comparing, we're not doing any of that. This was your experience.
right.
Um, and thank you for sharing that with us because it it makes a lot of sense, and it helps with knowing that somebody who's out here advocating gets it, right?
Right.
Because that's a deeper and that's a different way to connect with people, to be
Right.
like, I get it.
Right.
And it's not exactly the same. And I may not even tell you how much I get it. Um, but you can feel it, right? Like there's this connection there.
Right.
Um, so yeah, because doctors and people in power of privilege of not being able to just slow the fuck down and be like, oh, let me pause for a minute and ask this person who's right in front of me what they would like to do or how they want to navigate, or how do I have permission to do this to your body? Right.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
so consent, y'all, shows up in lots of different ways and is equally important across the board.
Yes. That's it.
Mhm. So you were talking a little bit earlier about um, this journey of what I'm hearing is like a lot of community and connecting, caring for people model that you've been in your whole life.
Yeah.
How did you enter the field?
Honestly, I just think I was born for this. I feel like
Mhm.
I have a servant's heart. Um, and it, like thinking about being a doula. So, like I was saying earlier, I'm an immigrant, right? So I came here. Um, I've lived in neighborhoods that, a lot of people would be scared in living in.
Mhm.
And it's so funny. I had talked to my friend about this a few weeks ago. I'm like, did you ever notice that the high school we went to had a daycare? And she's like, you know what? It did have a daycare. And I've always lived in a community where I've served. So whether
Mm,
it's serving homeless people, feeding them, I've just always had a servant's heart. And being in the military pushed me to kind of be in the maternity field, because when I was in the Navy, I was a hospital corpsman. And I
mm,
worked in the pediatric clinic, but I also worked with pregnant women. And after I went through my experience, um, having that emergency cesarean and everything that I learned, I'm like, this could have been preventable. And I have just literally, like, I have been focused on underserved communities, and I have been helping women even in the back end, because when you kind of look at my resume, you see I've been a medical assistant throughout my entire career. But when they would ask, like, Yenny, like, can you help me with this? I did so much more than that, that a lot of
mm,
people don't see on the side. And I just felt like as I grew older, I wanted to transition into being a full-time doula. I wanted to transition into helping families, helping women in community clinics that I was in. I just remember so many teenage moms being alone, not
mm.
having the education. A 10 to 15-minute appointment isn't enough to educate you. So
Um,
I have always educated my clients. I have always given them the resources, like, hey, what's going on? Do you have this? Because some
mm,
people don't even realize, like, you don't need, there are families that don't even have running water. There are families
mhm.
that don't have electricity. And there's just so much. So I just focus on transitioning into becoming a doula. And a lot of people don't realize that in our country, and actually in the world, you don't have to be certified to practice as a doula.
Mm.
I didn't even get certified until a few years ago because I didn't need to.
Oh,
And
wow.
but what happened is with COVID, a lot of hospitals started requiring certification.
Mm.
Midwives, midwives, birthing center, home births, you don't need it, but because of COVID, they placed a lot of restrictions. So um,
Oh, wow.
just the patients that I had as a medical assistant really pushed me to really focus on it. I became so passionate about just moms. As I was saying, I've always had a servant's heart. So I've always wanted to serve in communities that didn't have access to a
Mm,
lot of resources. But I still remember there were clients that, because their voices weren't heard, their baby passed away, like,
mm,
after delivery. So it was hard, like, I've had to be in rooms, in hospital rooms, where a mom is holding the 23-week-old baby and she's a foster teen, right? Like, I've had to be in these situations that I'm like, there's so many families that need us, and
mm,
there are not enough of us,
mm.
because there are doulas. But where is the doula that's willing to do that sliding scale so that a mom could have been advocated for,
Yeah.
right? like I've just been in these tough situations with patients and clients where I'm like, I need to do more.
Mm,
I've been focusing on. I transitioned from being a medical assistant, obviously not in the military anymore. So I've just focused a lot on helping moms, even victims of trafficking. Like there's just so
yeah.
much that I've focused on because they were alone. And
Yeah.
I understand that no one deserves to be alone during such an intimate time in their lives, an important time in their lives, but also people that go through trauma process birth differently. And
Hello.
and it's just hard, you know, like who's gonna be there? Some people going through CPS where their baby's gonna be taken in 24 hours. If
Mhm,
you're not a parent, did you ask them what they're going through? Like, so you
mhm,
be there to support because they're still gonna have a mental breakdown because of what's going on. We're still laboring. You're still gonna go through these hormonal changes postpartum. And
mhm.
it's just hard for me to even think about still that there are so many women and birthing folks that don't have the support that they need. And that's how I really transitioned, just in the Navy, really focusing on pediatrics and OB. And then throughout my career as a medical assistant, just working with OB clients, like pregnant clients. And it's just, I want to be their doula. I want to be there in that room. Even if they couldn't afford me, I wanted to provide those services for them because their life mattered to me and their baby's life mattered to me and their voice mattered to me.
Mhm. Absolutely. I love how you start off and you're talking about how you have a servant's heart, and it's so broad in the different ways that you support and you've been showing up, and then it's your purpose continues to get clearer and clearer, and here you are. You're like, "Okay, yes." Right in that room where more people need to be heard and protected, right?
Right.
And I appreciate you bringing in the piece too around it. Hormones are still fluctuating and bouncing all over the place. We still are navigating a huge change, whether it be within our bodies or our loved ones around us too,
Mhm.
right? And that really brings it back in for me to think about the mental health component and the support and the benefit of having a doula, right? And it comes in, I'm thinking about how my doula did some work with us while I was pregnant, and that education piece you're talking about. Had
Mhm.
the education, came in, talked about like physical movements and breathing and
Mhm.
just so many powerful things. And as I'm talking about it, I'm realizing that this cloth that I have on my altar came from my doula. She gave it to
Bill Bozo?
me. Yeah,
I love it.
beautiful, right? Like, and that's how I keep it connected. That's what, when I look at it, I'm like, yes, the support, the loving, all of that good stuff that helped me navigate and manage my own mental health at that time.
Mhm.
And like you said, it doesn't matter that I'm a therapist. I can't do therapy on myself. And sometimes there are things I just literally can't see and can't do for myself. And so to have that circle and have that support was so
Mhm.
clutch.
I love how you talked about mental health because that is just so important that people don't think about too, especially postpartum. A
Mm,
lot of them aren't ready for the body changes or aren't educated on, hey, you could lose your hair or this can happen to you, or if you decide to breast or chest feed. And I think too, like postpartum doulas, like I said, I'm a birth and postpartum doula, so I believe in continuity of care. And just to help families, like even during that postpartum time, doulas like can do overnight work. Doulas can help take care of the newborn while you sleep. We can do massages. There's so much that we can do to help. We can do your laundry so you can rest. We can clean your house. We can cook for you. And
mm,
it's just something that is just so beautiful. And a lot of people don't realize that when you think about the cuarentena, I don't know if
mm,
like, being Dominican, we used to say like for 40 days, you can't even wash your hair for 40 days. You better stay in that bed.
mm.
Your mom, your aunts, your grandmas, they came to help you. And we don't see that anymore because in the modern woman or the modern person, expectant parent, we have to prepare to go back to work. A lot of people, and that's the thing too, like
In
postpartum,
the US, way too fast.
right? Like postpartum is in 6 to 8 weeks. Truly, if I could say postpartum is forever, but I
Mhm.
think that when it comes to actual care, that 12 months, that first year is so essential. And a lot of people don't think about, I mean, with my son, I had horrible postpartum depression.
Mm.
I wasn't like, I had just transitioned to civilian sector. My husband was still in the military. I had my cesarean and I had no help. My mom came, she could only come for like 2 days. My dad came from Dominican Republic. He could only stay for a while. And I literally just remember, like, I have no one here. And this is a lot of stuff that active duty service members and veterans and military spouses go through that a lot of people don't even realize either, is we don't have anyone. You know, we're moving to different states
Yeah.
because we have different duty stations. And we have to do everything on our own. And I think this is what's beautiful about postpartum, part of being a doula, is that you're there to serve. Like, you're there to take care of the family. And
Mm.
also doulas, a lot of people feel like, well, the doula is replacing the partner. No, we're not. We involve the partner. We show them 2 techniques. We're
Yeah.
not there to we're not there to replace the partner, especially during birth or postpartum. We are there to educate both of you. We're there to be there for both of you as a family, for your children if you have more than one, you know? So it's just, I love that you brought up that mental health aspect, because we need to do better. We need to, especially for advocacy work, we have to advocate for paid maternal leave, paid parental leave, longer postpartum visits under your insurance. Is not 6 to 8 weeks. And it makes me so mad that we live in a country, a first world country at that. Like,
Yay.
there's some places that a whole year you get paid. There are some places 2 years. Like, we're slacking.
Yeah. Yeah, we got some issues over there because I mean, even like when you said the 1 year, I was like, oh yeah. I remember it was my son's first birthday and we were celebrating on like a Saturday or something like that. So I was like, oh, I can work this day. What? Man, listen, I was a big old hot ass mess. I was like sobbing and
Yeah.
there's so much change that had been going on.
Mhm.
And so it's just like we have to pay attention to the mental health component
Mhm.
during pregnancy, during the labor and delivery and postpartum.
Yeah.
And also recognize that it shows up and it looks so different for each individual.
Yes.
And we can't just be out here like, oh, this is what it looks like and they don't look like this, so they're fine.
Right.
No. Did you ask them if they're fine? Did you really ask them, how you doing? Like, yo, I remember looking out the window and I was like, I was nursing my son. I was sitting up in bed looking out the window and I was like, what day is it?
Yeah. Yep. Are we still in this year? Yes. Yes. Those sleepless nights is hard. It's hard.
Mhm.
You're exhausted, especially nursing. What? The first few weeks, you gotta wake up every 2 to 3 hours to nurse. Painful if you, and the thing too is, like, yes, we provide childbirth education. Yes, we provide like basic nursing, but that doesn't mean you're going to be ready. Like,
Right.
you and your baby have to bond. This is a bonding time, a learning time. So
Mhm.
it's a lot. It's a lot of people that people don't talk about.
And I
Mhm.
think one of the things too is that it's like, even outside of being a birthing person, there are still things that we can practice and learn and do on our own, and then
Mhm.
also support others if we choose to, but mainly ourselves, is that a whole lot of patience, right? So during that period of breastfeeding my son, I had to be really patient with myself
Yes.
and with him because I was like, this is new to both of us.
Yes.
Neither one of us know what we're doing. So there's that patience. And then there's also that communication that I needed to check in with, again, myself first, and then also check in with my partner. Like, how are you doing? What do you need? This is what I need. Can you help with this? And
Mhm.
really recognizing, like, how do I center myself? And how do I then also surround myself with the community that I need?
Yes.
And I take it outside of the birthing space because that's all of us. Like, everybody in different areas of their lives, we can benefit from communication. We can
Mhm.
benefit from checking in with ourselves first and being patient and so on and so forth.
Right. And community, like you mentioned, like,
Yeah.
if you don't have family or friends, you have to build your own community. And community is so important. I mean, I can speak for that myself, that I've had people really lift me up in times where I really needed it and I was alone. So community is very important. And then checking with yourself, like you said as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Absolutely. Let me see. I think those are kind of like all the main things that was coming up for me. Super excited that we got to chat some more. But is there anything that I missed that you're like, ooh, Vanessa, I really got to share this?
No, I mean, we talked about everything, and I love that we're
Oh,
doing this on the first Community Doula Week. I love this.
yes.
I
First
love it.
Community Doula Week.
Yes, I love it.
One, so I got this love-hate relationship with these days and weeks and months and stuff like that. And I can also recognize and value that it's creating awareness, right? Like by having a particular week, by people posting a lot more and talking about it a lot more, that is going to reach more people. Now, the next layer is like what you're doing and what Paradigm Doulas is doing is making it also accessible
Mhm,
and removing that concept that it's the rich people or the people with privilege and so on and so forth get this
mhm.
because we all deserve that support.
Right.
Mm.
Thank you so much for having me, Vanessa. I'm so glad we got to connect. And it's so funny because I even think about, I'm like, where did we start? And it started from seeing an ad about a sexual conversation that
Yeah.
I'm like, as a postpartum doula, this is perfect to attend.
What?
And
Yes.
we're going to that webinar, and I'm like, these people are so dope. I have to get to know them. And yeah, I'm so happy that we got to connect and
Mhm.
that we share this space. And thank you for opening this platform for people to learn more about community doulas, what we do, and just getting to know each other.
Absolutely. I love it so much. And let that be a lesson to everybody, y'all.
Mm.
Don't be afraid to slide up in somebody's DMs and be like, hey, I love the work that you're doing. Let's connect. I think that's basically literally the same thing that you said, where you were like, this is dope. Y'all are amazing. Let's
Yeah,
connect.
yeah.
And I looked at your page, I looked at your website, and I was like, oh, yes, fuck yes, we are going to connect. We need to. So you just never know where that magic and where our souls are taking us. And I definitely don't think it was just by chance that we connected the way we did. So I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Vanessa. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, if y'all stay tuned for the whole episode, shout out to you. And this is, a little check mark next to part of your self care. I look forward to sharing some more with you next week. Don't forget, you could check us out on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And then, of course, if you want the video version, we are on YouTube, gather.heal. So I hope y'all have nothing short of a beautiful fucking day. Peace, y'all.